"We're prioritizing Stephanie's birthday party over yours, Mom," my daughter Jessica announced, like she was discussing the weather. I smiled and nodded. Understood. She had absolutely no idea I'd just inherited a trust fund worth $8.2 million from my late Aunt Eleanor, the same Aunt Jessica had called that crazy old bat at last year's Thanksgiving dinner. When Jessica saw the photos from my intimate birthday celebration at the plaza with Manhattan's elite, she couldn't even form words. "Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me take you back to how we got here, because trust me, this story gets better." It was Tuesday morning, March 15th, when my perfectly ordinary life took its first extraordinary turn. I was standing in my kitchen making my usual coffee when the phone rang. The caller ID showed Peterson and Associates, a law firm I'd never heard of. Normally, I would have let it go to voicemail, figuring it was some telemarketer with a fancy name, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Margaret Thompson?" The voice was crisp, professional. "Speaking. This is David Peterson from Peterson and Associates. I'm handling the estate of Eleanor Whitfield. You've been named as the primary beneficiary." I nearly dropped my coffee mug. Aunt Eleanor had been my mother's sister, a woman who'd lived like a hermit in that massive house upstate for as long as I could remember. We'd sent Christmas cards, sure, but actual visits? Maybe twice in my entire adult life. "I'm sorry. There must be some mistake. Eleanor and I weren't particularly close." "No mistake. Mrs. Thompson, Miss Whitfield was quite specific. She left detailed instructions about how she wanted her affairs handled, including a sealed letter for you. Would Thursday at 2 p.m. work for you to come in?" Thursday couldn't come fast enough. I'd always lived paycheck to paycheck, even after my divorce 5 years ago. Working as a high school secretary wasn't exactly lucrative, but it had been enough to keep my head above water. Barely. The law office was in one of those glass towers downtown that always made me feel underdressed. Mr. Peterson was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Miss Whitfield was quite a remarkable woman," he began, opening a thick file. "She never married, no children, and apparently spent the last 20 years of her life making very shrewd investments." He slid a document across the desk. I read the number 3 times before it sank in. $8,200,000, plus the house, plus a portfolio of stocks that, according to him, were performing exceptionally well. "This can't be right," I whispered. "It's quite right. There's also this." He handed me an envelope with my name written in Eleanor's spidery handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. The letter was brief, but devastating. "Margaret, you were the only one who never asked me for money. You were the only one who visited because you wanted to, not because you needed something. The others will be furious, but you deserve this. Use it wisely. Use it to make them remember who they're dealing with. Eleanor, the others." She meant my family, of course. Jessica and her husband Brad, who made 6 figures between them, but always seemed to need just a little help with this or that. My son Michael, who'd borrowed money for his business 3 years ago and still hadn't paid back a dime. They'd all written Eleanor off as the weird aunt with the creepy old house. Turns out the creepy old house was worth $1.2 million. I walked out of that law office in a daze. For 48 hours, I told no one. I went to work, came home, made dinner, watched TV. Normal routine. But inside, everything had changed. I wasn't just Margaret Thompson, divorce secretary, anymore. I was Margaret Thompson, millionaire, and nobody knew. That's when Jessica called about my birthday. "Mom, I hate to do this, but we're going to have to cancel your birthday dinner. Stephanie's friend is having a party that same night, and you know how important friendships are at her age." Stephanie was my 16-year-old granddaughter, who hadn't spoken to me voluntarily in 2 years, except to ask for money for concerts or clothes. "Of course," I'd said. "Family first." What I didn't say was that I'd already made other plans. Very different plans. The concierge at the plaza looked at me like I'd wandered in from a homeless shelter when I walked up to make a reservation. Fair enough. I was wearing my usual Target cardigan and sensible shoes. But when I mentioned I needed their private dining room for 12 people and handed over my new platinum credit card, his entire demeanor shifted. "Of course, Mrs. Thompson. Will this be for a special occasion? My 55th birthday, I said, enjoying the way his eyebrows shot up when the card was approved without question. I had exactly 2 weeks to plan the most elegant birthday celebration of my life. The guest list was interesting. Some old college friends I'd reconnected with, my neighbor Dorothy, who'd always been kind to me, a few people from work who'd actually treated me like a human being over the years. People who knew nothing about my windfall, but who'd earned their invitations through simple decency. Meanwhile, Jessica kept texting me updates about Stephanie's party plans like I should be grateful for the blow-by-blow. Stephanie is so excited. Brad rented one of those photo booths. It's costing us a fortune, but you only turned 16 once, right? Right. You also only turned 55 once, but apparently that was less important than a teenager's social media opportunities. The morning of my birthday, I did something I'd never done in my life. I went to a high-end salon. Not supercuts, not great clips. A real salon where they served you wine and treated your hair like it mattered. "What are we thinking today?" asked Marcus, the stylist, running his fingers through my graying bob. "I'm thinking it's time for a change." 3 hours later, I didn't recognize myself. The silver streaks in my hair had been transformed into elegant platinum highlights. My usual shapeless style had become a sophisticated shoulder-length cut that actually had personality. Marcus had even convinced me to let his colleague do my makeup. "You look stunning," he said, and for the first time in years, I believed it. I'd bought a dress for the occasion too, not from the department store clearance rack where I usually shopped. This one came from a boutique where the saleswoman called me madam and brought me champagne while I tried things on. The dress was navy blue silk with a subtle pattern, cut perfectly to flatter instead of hide. The private dining room at the plaza was exactly what I'd hoped for. Elegant without being stuffy, intimate without feeling cramped. Fresh flowers, real silverware, the kind of ambiance I'd only seen in movies. My guests arrived looking appropriately amazed. Dorothy actually gasped when she saw me. "Margaret, you look absolutely radiant. What's the occasion?" "Just feeling like celebrating," I said, which was the truth, if not the whole truth. Dinner was perfect. The conversation flowed, the wine was excellent, and for the first time in years, I felt like the center of attention for all the right reasons. These people were here because they genuinely liked me, not because they needed something from me. Around dessert, my phone started buzzing with texts from Jessica. "Hope you're having a nice quiet evening. Stephanie's party is amazing. She's getting so many great photos. The photo booth was such a hit." I silenced the phone and ordered another bottle of champagne. It was Dorothy who suggested we take pictures. "This is too lovely not to document," she said, pulling out her phone. "Actually," I said, feeling reckless, "let's do this properly." I called over our server and asked if the hotel photographer was available. 20 minutes later, we had a professional taking pictures of our group at the elegantly set table, wine glasses raised, everyone looking genuinely happy to be there. The photographer was good at his job. He caught candid moments, me laughing at one of Dorothy's stories, the warm glow of the candles, the way the light from the chandelier made everything look magical. "These are going to be beautiful," he promised, handing me his business card. "I'll have them ready tomorrow." As my guests prepared to leave, each one hugged me and commented on what a wonderful evening it had been. "This was the most elegant birthday party I've ever attended," said Patricia, my former college roommate. "You really know how to do things right, Margaret." I smiled mysteriously. "I'm full of surprises." After everyone left, I sat alone in the dining room for a few extra minutes, savoring the quiet elegance. Tomorrow, I would post those professional photos. Tomorrow, Jessica would see exactly how her mother had spent her quiet evening. But tonight, I was just going to enjoy being Margaret Thompson, woman of mystery. The photos were even more stunning than I'd expected. The hotel photographer had captured something I'd almost forgotten existed. Me, looking confident and sophisticated, surrounded by people who actually wanted to be there. In one shot, I was raising my wine glass in a toast, my platinum hair catching the light, wearing that navy silk dress like I'd been born to it. I spent Friday morning carefully selecting which photos to post on social media. I wasn't a frequent poster, usually just birthday wishes for family members or the occasional snapshot of my garden. But these photos deserved a debut. I chose 3. One of the full table with all my guests, one candid shot of me laughing, and one where I was clearly the center of attention, looking elegant and mysterious in the soft lighting. The caption was simple: celebrating another year of life with wonderful friends at the plaza. Grateful for all the blessings this year has brought. Within an hour, the comments started rolling in. College friends I hadn't spoken to in months, co-workers expressing amazement, neighbors wanting to know when I'd become so glamorous. The photos were getting more likes than anything I'd ever posted. It was Jessica who called first. "Mom, I just saw your pictures on Facebook." "Oh, did you like them? I thought they turned out nicely. You were at the plaza? In New York?" I could hear the confusion in her voice, mixed with something else. Something that sounded suspiciously like panic. "Yes, dear. I had dinner there for my birthday. But how did you... I mean, that place is incredibly expensive. And who were all those people?" "Friends," I said simply. "People who wanted to celebrate with me." "Mom, we need to talk. Can I come over?" "I'm afraid I'm busy today. Tomorrow would be better." There was a pause. "Busy doing what?" "Oh, this and that. I'm meeting with my financial advisor, actually." Another pause, longer this time. "Your financial advisor?" "Yes, I've realized I need to be more strategic about my investments, planning for the future and all that." "Mom, what's going on? You're scaring me." I almost laughed. Scaring her? After years of being treated like a convenient ATM, taking care of myself was scary? "Nothing's going on, Jessica. I'm just making some changes. Living a little. You said yourself that friendships are important." After I hung up, I made myself another cup of coffee and smiled. Phase 1 was complete. The photos had done exactly what I'd hoped. They'd gotten attention. But more importantly, they'd made Jessica realize that her mother might not be quite as predictable as she'd assumed. My phone rang again. This time it was Michael. "Mom, Jessica called me. She's freaking out about some pictures you posted. They're lovely pictures, if I do say so myself. She said you were at some fancy restaurant with people she didn't recognize." "The plaza isn't just a restaurant, Michael. It's a hotel with quite a distinguished history. And yes, I do have friends outside the family." "Shocking, I know." "Mom, are you feeling okay? This doesn't sound like you." There it was. The assumption that wanting nice things, celebrating myself, being anything other than quietly grateful for scraps was somehow evidence of mental instability. "I'm feeling wonderful, actually. Better than I have in years." "Okay, but Mom, can we talk about something? Jessica mentioned you said something about a financial advisor." "Ah, there was the real concern. Not my happiness, not my well-being, my finances. Yes, I've been reviewing my portfolio, making sure everything is in order." "Your portfolio?" He sounded genuinely confused. "Mom, you work as a school secretary." "Indeed I do. And? I didn't know you had investments to review." "Michael, sweetheart, there are many things about my life that you don't know. I'm beginning to realize that's been my mistake, keeping too much to myself." "What do you mean?" "Nothing dramatic. I just think it's time I started living more fully, making decisions based on what I want instead of what everyone else expects." After Michael hung up, I could practically hear the wheels turning. Both my children were clearly having the same thought. If Mom has money we didn't know about, what does that mean for us? The doorbell rang around 3 o'clock. I wasn't surprised to see Jessica standing there with Brad, both of them looking like they'd come to stage an intervention. "Hi, Mom," Jessica said carefully. "We thought we'd stop by to chat." "How lovely. Come in." They settled on my couch like they were visiting someone with a contagious disease. Brad kept glancing around the room as if he expected to see evidence of my mysterious transformation hiding in the corners. "So," Jessica began, "those pictures were really something." "Thank you. I thought they captured the evening perfectly." "The thing is, Mom, we're a little confused. The plaza is incredibly expensive. Like, seriously expensive." "Yes, it is." "So how—" I let the question hang in the air for a moment, watching them squirm. "How what, dear? How could you afford it?" There it was, the real question. Not, "Did you have a nice time?" or "You looked beautiful." Just how much did it cost, and where did the money come from? "Jessica," I said gently, "do you remember what you told me when I asked about attending Stephanie's Sweet 16 party? That's completely different. You said you were prioritizing Stephanie's birthday over mine, that her friendships mattered more than mine. Mom, she's 16. It's an important age. I'm 55, also an important age, as it turns out. Brad finally spoke up. Mrs. Thompson, we're just concerned about your spending, making sure you're not getting in over your head financially. I smiled at him. Sweet Brad, who'd borrowed $15,000 from me 2 years ago for his sure-thing cryptocurrency investment and had never mentioned paying it back. That's very thoughtful, Brad. Tell me, how's that Bitcoin working out for you? His face went red. That's different. Is it? Because I seem to remember you assuring me it was a solid investment when you needed the money. Jessica shot Brad a warning look. Mom, that's not what this is about. Isn't it? Because it feels like the only time my finances become a family concern is when you're worried about your own access to them. The room went very quiet. That's not fair, Jessica said finally. You're right. Fair would have been you remembering my birthday without being reminded. Fair would have been treating my celebration as more important than a teenager's photo opportunity. I stood up. But fair is overrated. What matters is what happens next. What happened next was exactly what I'd hoped for. Complete family chaos. Over the weekend, my phone rang nonstop. Jessica called 3 times. Michael called twice, and Brad even tried calling once, which was unprecedented since he usually avoided talking to me directly. The conversations followed a predictable pattern. First, concern for my unusual behavior. Then, increasingly direct questions about my finances. Finally, barely concealed panic about what this meant for their own financial expectations. I let them stew for exactly 48 hours before calling a family meeting. I think it's time we all sat down and had an honest conversation, I told Jessica when I called Monday morning. Yes, I think so too. We're really worried about you, Mom. Wonderful. Tomorrow evening, 7 o'clock. My house. Should we bring Stephanie? No. This is an adult conversation. Tuesday evening came, and they arrived looking like they were attending a funeral. Jessica wore her most serious outfit, the black pantsuit she saved for parent-teacher conferences and court appearances. Michael looked uncomfortable in a button-down shirt instead of his usual t-shirt. Brad carried a manila folder, which meant they'd been doing research. I served coffee and store-bought cookies, same as always. Let them think nothing had changed. So, Jessica began, settling into her usual spot on the couch. We wanted to talk to you about these recent changes. Changes? The expensive dinner? The new look? This talk about financial advisors and portfolios? I sipped my coffee calmly. What about them concerns you? Michael leaned forward. Mom, we love you, and we're worried that someone might be taking advantage of you. Taking advantage of me how? Well, Brad opened his folder. We did some research on the plaza. Dinner for 12 people there would cost at least $3,000. Probably more with wine and champagne. $4,200 actually, including gratuity. The number hit them like a physical blow. Jessica's mouth fell open. 4,000, she whispered, and 20 minutes with their photographer. Worth every penny for the memories. Mom, Michael's voice was careful, like he was talking to someone dangerous. Where did that money come from? My bank account. But Mom, Jessica was gaining steam now. You work as a school secretary. Your salary is maybe $35,000 a year. How do you have $4,000 to spend on one dinner? I set down my coffee cup. Jessica, how much do you think I make? I just said, no, I mean total income. Salary, pension contributions, Social Security projections, investment returns. They exchanged glances. Clearly, they'd never actually looked into my finances beyond knowing I was willing to help them when they asked. I don't know the exact numbers, Jessica admitted, but you're concerned about how I spend my money. We're concerned about you spending money you don't have. What if I told you I have more money than you realize? Another exchange of glances. This was the moment they'd been building toward, the question that had been eating at them since Saturday's photos. How much more? Michael asked. I smiled. Enough. Mom, that's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight. I could see Brad calculating in his head, probably trying to figure out whether I had thousands or tens of thousands tucked away somewhere. The thing is, I continued, your concern about my finances is fascinating to me. Why? Because in 32 years of being your mother, Jessica, and 30 years of being yours, Michael, neither of you has ever asked about my financial situation except when you needed something. That's not true, Jessica protested. When was the last time you asked if I was saving enough for retirement, or whether my health insurance was adequate, or if I had enough emergency savings? Silence. But the minute I spend money on myself, suddenly you're concerned about my financial well-being. Mom, you just realized that if I have money to spend on fancy dinners, I might have been saying no to your requests when I could have been saying yes. Direct hit. I could see it in their faces. That's not what this is about, Michael said, but his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Brad, what were you going to ask me for next? Brad flushed. I don't know what you mean. The folder. Brad, what's in it besides restaurant prices? He glanced at Jessica, who nodded reluctantly. We've been looking at refinancing the house. We thought maybe if you were in a position to help with some of the closing costs. There it was. They hadn't come here out of concern for my mental health or financial stability. They'd come because they needed money and were suddenly worried the well might be deeper than they'd assumed. How much? Just $15,000. We'll pay you back, of course, as soon as... When you pay back the $15,000 you borrowed for Brad's cryptocurrency investment? Mom, that's different. When you pay back the $8,000 I gave you for Stephanie's orthodontics, or the $12,000 for Michael's business equipment, or the $6,000 for your kitchen renovation that turned out to cost twice what you expected? The room went dead silent. I could see them doing the math, realizing for the first time exactly how much they'd borrowed over the years. We never asked you to keep track, Jessica said quietly. You never asked me to forgive the debts either. I stood up and walked to my desk, pulling out a folder of my own. $41,700. That's what you collectively owe me. $41,700 that I gave you willingly because I love you. Mom, and not once did any of you ask if I could afford it. Not once did you consider that maybe I had plans for that money. Not once did you think about paying it back without being asked. I closed the folder and sat back down. So forgive me if I'm not particularly moved by your sudden concern for my financial well-being. We were going to pay you back, Michael said weakly. When? When we could afford it. And when would that be? After the next vacation? After Stephanie's car? After Brad's next sure-thing investment? I looked at each of them in turn. I love you all, but I'm done being your backup bank. What does that mean? Jessica asked. It means the bank of Mom is permanently closed. It means I'm going to start spending my money on things that make me happy. It means the next time you ask me for a loan, the answer will be no. The silence stretched for a full minute. Finally, Brad spoke. Mrs. Thompson, can I ask you something? How much money do you actually have? I smiled. Enough to take care of myself for the rest of my life. Enough to do whatever I want, whenever I want to do it. Enough that I never have to depend on my children for anything. But how much is enough? More than you need to know, Brad. Much more than you need to know. The aftermath of Tuesday's family meeting was even more entertaining than I'd anticipated. For 3 days, my phone was mercifully quiet. No sudden emergencies requiring financial assistance, no casual requests for small loans, no guilt trips about family obligations. Just blessed silence. Then Friday afternoon brought a knock on my door. I opened it to find Stephanie, my 16-year-old granddaughter, looking uncharacteristically humble. She'd clearly been sent as the family's secret weapon. Hi, Grandma, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. Hello, Stephanie. This is a surprise. Can I come in? I wanted to talk to you about something. I let her in, genuinely curious about what approach they'd coached her to take. Stephanie settled on the couch where her parents had sat 3 days earlier, but she looked much more nervous than they had. So, she began, Mom told me about your conversation the other night. Did she? She said you guys had a disagreement about money. I sat across from her. Is that what she called it? Grandma, I want to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth. All right. Are you rich? The directness caught me off guard. No dancing around, no gentle probing. Just straight to the point. Why do you ask? Because everyone's freaking out, and nobody will tell me why. Mom keeps having hushed conversations with Dad. Uncle Michael called like 5 times, and you posted those pictures from that fancy restaurant, and everyone's acting like you robbed a bank or something. I studied my granddaughter's face. For all her teenage self-absorption, Stephanie was intelligent, more intelligent than her parents gave her credit for. What do you think, Stephanie? I think you have money that nobody knew about. And I think Mom and Dad are scared because they've been borrowing money from you. And now they're worried you might stop. Out of the mouths of babes. That's very perceptive. So are you. Rich, I mean. I considered my answer carefully. Stephanie was still a child, and whatever I told her would be repeated to her parents within the hour. Stephanie, do you know what your parents owe me? Owe you? Money they've borrowed over the years. She shook her head. $41,700. Her eyes went wide. Seriously? Seriously. Your orthodontics, your father's business ventures, their house improvements, various emergencies over the years? They never said they borrowed money from you. No, I don't suppose they would. Stephanie was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Is that why you're mad at them? I'm not mad. Sweetheart, I'm disappointed. There's a difference. What's the difference? Mad means you want to punish someone. Disappointed means you've realized you expected better than you should have. She nodded slowly. So what happens now? Now I stop lending money to people who don't pay it back. And you start spending it on yourself? Exactly. Good for you. Grandma, that surprised me. You're not upset? Why would I be upset? You worked hard for your money. You should get to spend it on whatever makes you happy. Your parents might not agree. My parents are kind of spoiled, Stephanie said matter-of-factly. They always expect things to work out because they usually do. But that doesn't mean it's fair to you. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Grandma, can I ask you something else? Of course. That birthday dinner at the plaza, was it amazing? I smiled. It was absolutely amazing. The food, the service, the company. It was everything a birthday celebration should be. I'm glad. I'm sorry we missed it for my stupid party. Your party wasn't stupid, Stephanie. It kind of was. I mean, it was fun, but it was just a bunch of teenagers taking selfies. Your party looked elegant. It was elegant. Sometimes elegance is worth the extra cost. Will you show me the pictures? The good ones. Not just the ones you posted? I got my laptop and pulled up the photographer's gallery. Stephanie scrolled through the images with genuine appreciation. Grandma, you look like a movie star in these. That's very sweet of you to say. I'm serious. You look happy. Really happy. I don't think I've seen you look that happy in, I don't know, ever. That hit me harder than I'd expected. Have I seemed unhappy to you? Not unhappy exactly. More like tired. Like you were always taking care of everyone else and never got to rest. From the mouths of babes, indeed. Well, I said, I'm planning to rest more often now. Are you going to do more fancy dinners? I'm planning to do whatever makes me happy. Can I come sometime? To one of your fancy dinners? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Stephanie was on the verge of becoming a young woman, caught between her parents' expectations and her own emerging sense of independence. Would you like that? I would love that. I've never been anywhere really elegant. Then we'll plan something special. Just the two of us. Her face lit up. Really? Really? But Stephanie? Yeah? This stays between us for now. I think your parents have enough to worry about without adding grandmother-granddaughter dinner dates to the mix. She grinned. It'll be our secret. After Stephanie left, I sat in my quiet house and thought about what she'd said. That I'd looked tired for years, always taking care of everyone else. How had I let that happen? When had being needed become more important than being respected? My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Did Stephanie talk to you? We didn't send her over, I swear. She went on her own. I texted back. We had a lovely chat. What did you two talk about? Grandmother-granddaughter things. Mom, please. We're really worried about this whole situation. I stared at the message for a long moment before typing my response. Jessica, I've been worried about my financial future for 30 years. I've been worried about having enough for retirement, enough for emergencies, enough to maintain my independence as I age. And I handled those worries by myself because I didn't want to burden my children. So forgive me if I'm not particularly concerned about your worry that I might stop enabling your financial irresponsibility. I hit send before I could change my mind. Her response came back immediately. That's harsh, Mom. Yes, I typed, it is. The second family meeting wasn't my idea. Jessica called Saturday morning and announced they were coming over to clear the air. She used her firm voice, the one that had worked on me for 30 years, but felt strangely powerless now. "I'm actually busy today, Jessica." "Busy doing what?" "I'm going car shopping." "Car shopping? Mom, your car is only 3 years old." "My car is a practical sedan that gets good gas mileage and has room for other people's groceries. I'm thinking about something more fun." The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know about Jessica's mental state. "Mom, we really need to talk. As a family." "Fine. 2 o'clock. But I have an appointment at 4, so keep it brief." They arrived precisely at 2, all three of them wearing identical expressions of barely contained anxiety. Michael had even brought Ellen, his girlfriend of 2 years, which meant they'd decided they needed witnesses. "Ellen," I said warmly, "how lovely to see you. How are the wedding plans coming?" Ellen smiled nervously. "We've actually decided to postpone for a while." "Oh? Nothing serious, I hope?" "Just some financial considerations," Michael said quickly. "Ah." So Michael had been planning to ask for money for the wedding, and my recent Declaration of Independence had thrown a wrench in those plans. "That's probably wise," I said. "Weddings can be so expensive when you want them to be special." We all settled in the living room with the same awkward energy as a therapy session. "Mom," Jessica began, "we owe you an apology." "Do you? We've been taking your generosity for granted." "We realize that now." I waited. Experience had taught me that whatever came after "but" would be the real message. "But we're also concerned that you're making decisions based on emotion rather than logic." There it was. "What decisions concern you?" "Well," Brad pulled out his phone, "we looked up car prices at the dealership you mentioned. The models you were asking about are all luxury vehicles, $40,000 and up. Imagine that." "Mom," Michael joined in, "$40,000 could pay for Ellen's nursing school. It could be a down payment on a house. It's a life-changing amount of money." "Yes, it could do all those things. If it were your money." "It's not about the money being ours, isn't it? Because it sounds like you're upset that I might spend my money on something I want instead of something you need." "We're upset that you're acting like money doesn't matter," Jessica said. "Money matters tremendously. That's why I've been careful with it for 30 years. That's why I have $40,000 to spend on a car if I choose to." "But do you need a $40,000 car?" Brad asked. I turned to look at him directly. "Brad, did you need a cryptocurrency investment? That's different. Did Jessica need a kitchen renovation that cost twice the original estimate?" "Mom, that's not—" "Did Michael need to start a business with equipment he couldn't afford?" "The business is doing well," Michael protested. "I'm glad to hear it. So you'll be paying me back soon?" Silence. "You see, here's what I've learned," I continued. "When you want something, it's an investment or a necessity or a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. When I want something, it's frivolous spending that needs to be justified to a panel of judges." "That's not fair," Ellen said quietly, then looked startled that she'd spoken. "You're right, Ellen. It's not fair. Thank you for pointing that out." Ellen looked confused. I know what you meant. But you're absolutely right. It's not fair that a grown woman has to justify her purchases to her adult children. It's not fair that my financial decisions are subject to family committee review while yours are considered private matters." Jessica was getting frustrated. "Mom, we're trying to have a reasonable conversation here." "Are we? Because it feels like you're trying to find a way to make me feel guilty for having money you didn't know about." "We're not trying to make you feel guilty," Michael said. "Then why are you here?" Another long silence. Finally, Brad spoke up. "Mrs. Thompson, can I be honest?" "By all means. We came here to ask if you'd consider paying for our refinancing costs and Ellen's nursing school. Before we knew about whatever's changed. And now we don't know if we should still ask or if that would make us look greedy." I almost laughed. Finally, some honesty. "How much?" $15,000 for the refinancing," Jessica said. $12,000 for Ellen's school. $27,000. "We'd pay you back," Ellen said earnestly. "With interest." "Like the $41,700 I'm already owed?" Ellen's face fell as she realized her mistake. "Mom," Jessica tried again, "we're not asking for charity. We're asking for help from family. I helped Brad with his sure thing investment. I helped you with Stephanie's orthodontics and your kitchen renovation and your emergency car repair and your emergency roof repair. I helped Michael with his business startup. When does family help become expected support? We never expected. You absolutely expected it. You expected it so much that you planned major financial decisions around my willingness to contribute. I stood up. And the most telling part of this conversation is that not one of you has asked where the money came from. They exchanged glances. We figured you'd been saving, Jessica said. For 30 years? On a secretary's salary? Well, you didn't ask because you don't actually care where it came from. You only care that it exists and whether you can access it. That's not true, Michael protested. Michael, you've been dating Ellen for 2 years. Have you ever once asked about my retirement planning? My insurance coverage? Whether I have enough saved for long-term care if I need it? No. But the minute you think I might have money to spare, suddenly my finances become a family concern. I walked to the window and looked out at my sensible sedan in the driveway. I'll make you all a deal, I said without turning around. I'll continue to help family members who need genuine assistance. Emergency medical bills, job loss, unexpected disasters, real emergencies. I turned back to face them. But I'm done funding lifestyle choices. I'm done paying for wants disguised as needs. And I'm done having my financial decisions questioned by people who haven't asked about my financial well-being in 30 years. Mom, the refinancing and Ellen's nursing school are not emergencies. They're investments in your futures that you can fund yourselves. But we can't afford. Then you'll have to wait until you can. Like everyone else does. I checked my watch. Now I have a 4 o'clock appointment to test drive a BMW. Unless someone has a medical emergency that requires immediate attention, this conversation is over. They filed out looking like I'd just burned down their Christmas tree. Stephanie was the last one out the door. She hung back and whispered, "What color BMW are you looking at?" "I'm thinking red," I whispered back. "Good choice, Grandma." Yes, I thought as I watched them drive away. It really was. The red BMW was absolutely perfect. Not practical, not sensible, not something a 55-year-old school secretary was supposed to want. Which made it exactly right. The salesman, Kevin, initially tried to steer me toward something more appropriate for your lifestyle, a translation I understood perfectly. But when I mentioned I was paying cash and handed him the pre-approval letter from my bank, his entire attitude shifted. "The X3 is a beautiful vehicle," he said, practically purring. "Excellent safety ratings, luxury features, and this particular red is quite striking." It was striking. Bold and confident, and completely unlike anything I'd ever owned. I took it for a test drive and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Pure joy. "I'll take it," I said when we returned to the lot. Kevin looked surprised. "Don't you want to discuss financing options? Monthly payments can be quite reasonable with our current rates." I said I'll take it. Cash. The paperwork took 2 hours, but I didn't mind. I sat in Kevin's office, sipping coffee and watching other customers negotiate payment plans for cars that cost less than my monthly discretionary income. When Kevin handed me the keys, I felt like I was accepting the keys to a new life. "Congratulations, Mrs. Thompson. Enjoy your new car." I drove home slowly, savoring the feel of the leather seats, the quiet purr of the engine, the way other drivers looked at my car with obvious envy. This was what it felt like to buy something simply because I wanted it. My neighbor, Dorothy, was getting her mail when I pulled into my driveway. "Margaret, is that your car?" "It certainly is." "It's gorgeous. What made you decide to upgrade?" "I decided I was tired of driving something practical." Dorothy laughed. "Good for you. Harold always said life's too short to drive boring cars." That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my back deck, admiring my new car through the kitchen window. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Patricia from your birthday dinner. Dorothy gave me your number. I hope you don't mind, but I had to tell you. You've inspired me to make some changes in my own life. Thank you for showing me what it looks like to celebrate yourself properly." I smiled and texted back, "Never apologize for treating yourself well. Life is too short to wait for permission." Her response came immediately. "Exactly. By the way, a few of us from dinner were talking about getting together again soon. Would you be interested in making this a regular thing?" A regular thing. A group of friends who actually enjoyed my company, who didn't see me as a solution to their problems or a source of emergency funding. I would love that. Over the next week, my new life began to take shape. I joined Patricia and 2 other women from the birthday dinner for lunch at a charming bistro downtown. I made an appointment with a personal shopper at Nordstrom to update my wardrobe. I booked a spa day for the following weekend. Each expenditure was carefully calculated, not for its practicality, but for its contribution to my happiness. And for the first time in decades, my happiness felt like a worthwhile investment. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was enjoying my coffee on the deck when I heard a car pull up. Through the kitchen window, I saw Ellen getting out of Michael's truck. I opened the front door before she could knock. "Ellen, this is a surprise." "Hi, Mrs. Thompson. I hope you don't mind me stopping by." I was in the neighborhood and thought, well, I wanted to talk to you about something. I invited her in, genuinely curious about what had brought her here alone. "Your new car is beautiful," she said, settling on the couch. "Thank you. I'm quite pleased with it. Mrs. Thompson, I owe you an apology." "Do you?" "I never should have let Michael bring me to that family meeting. It wasn't my place to be part of that conversation." I studied her face. Ellen was a sweet girl, earnest and hardworking, but she'd been dating Michael long enough to get caught up in the family's expectation that I would solve their financial problems. "What brings you here today, Ellen?" "I've been thinking about what you said, about the difference between emergencies and lifestyle choices. And you were right. Nursing school isn't an emergency. It's something I want, and I should find a way to pay for it myself." "That's very mature of you." "I've been looking into it, and there are payment plans, financial aid options, work-study programs. It might take longer, but I can do it without asking you for money." I felt a genuine surge of respect for her. "I'm impressed, Ellen. But I also wanted to ask you something, and I hope you won't think I'm being nosy." "Go ahead." "Michael thinks you won some kind of lottery or inheritance. Jessica thinks you've been secretly saving for decades. Brad thinks you might have made some kind of investment windfall. What do you think?" "I think it doesn't matter where the money came from. What matters is that it's yours, and you have every right to spend it however you want." "Smart girl." "But," she continued, "I am curious about something else." "What's that?" "Are you happy? I mean, really happy? Because Michael is worried that you're having some kind of midlife crisis, spending money to fill an emotional void." I considered her question seriously. "Ellen, do you know what I did for my last 10 birthdays?" "No." "I made dinner for my family. I bought my own cake. I cleaned up afterward. I spent my birthday taking care of everyone else while they acted like they were doing me a favor by showing up." "That sounds lonely." It was. But I convinced myself it was what mothers were supposed to do. Put everyone else first. Be grateful for whatever attention I received. And now? Now I'm learning what it feels like to put myself first sometimes. To spend my money on things that make me happy instead of things that make other people comfortable. That doesn't sound like a midlife crisis. That sounds like common sense. "I like you, Ellen. You're much smarter than my son gives you credit for." She blushed. "Michael's a good guy. He just, well, he's used to having problems solved for him." "Yes, he is. And whose fault is that?" "Probably not entirely his." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Mrs. Thompson, can I ask you one more thing?" "Of course. If Michael and I get married, and we have financial struggles the way couples do, will you help us? If you have genuine emergencies, yes. If you want me to fund a lifestyle you can't afford, no. That's fair. And Ellen?" "Yes. If you ever want advice about managing money, or dealing with family expectations, or just want to talk to someone who's learned some hard lessons about putting yourself first, you're always welcome here." "Thank you. That means a lot." After Ellen left, I realized something had shifted. For the first time since this whole situation began, someone in my family had approached me with respect instead of expectation. Someone had acknowledged my right to make my own decisions without requiring justification. It was a small victory, but it felt enormous. That evening, I called the lawyer who'd handled Eleanor's estate. "Mr. Peterson, this is Margaret Thompson. I have a question about the trust." "Of course, Mrs. Thompson. How can I help?" "I want to set up some financial safeguards. Trust funds for my grandchildren's education. Medical insurance upgrades for myself. Long-term care planning. I want to make sure my money is protected and working for my future." "Excellent idea. When would you like to schedule a meeting?" "As soon as possible. It's time I started planning for the life I want instead of the life everyone else expects me to have." I'll have my assistant call you tomorrow to set up an appointment. As I hung up the phone, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The bank of Mom might be closed, but the Margaret Thompson Investment Fund was just getting started. The meeting with Mr. Peterson revealed just how dramatically my life had changed in the span of 3 weeks. Sitting in his office, reviewing trust documents and investment options, I realized I wasn't just a woman who'd inherited some money. I was a woman with serious wealth who needed serious financial planning. The original trust has grown substantially since your aunt's death, he explained, showing me updated portfolio statements. We're now looking at approximately $9.8 million in total assets. $9.8 million. A month ago, my biggest financial concern was whether I could afford to replace my aging washing machine. I want to establish education trusts for my grandchildren, I said. College, graduate school, whatever they need for their futures. Very wise. And for yourself? Long-term care insurance, health coverage upgrades, travel funds, and... I paused, thinking about Ellen's visit. I want to establish a small emergency fund that can help family members with genuine crises, but with very specific limitations. Limitations? Medical emergencies, job loss, natural disasters, real problems, not lifestyle funding. Mr. Peterson smiled. You've learned some hard lessons about family and money. I'm learning that having money changes how people see you, but it doesn't have to change who you are. By the time I left his office, I had a comprehensive plan in place. Stephanie and any future grandchildren would have their education fully funded. My own future was secure no matter what health issues might arise, and I had a structured way to help family members without enabling financial irresponsibility. I also had another surprise in store. Thursday evening, I called Stephanie. Grandma, this is unexpected. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. Sweetheart, I have a proposition for you. A proposition? How would you like to spend Saturday in Manhattan? Shopping, lunch at a nice restaurant, maybe a Broadway show if we can get tickets. Are you serious? Completely serious. Just you and me. A proper grandmother-granddaughter day. Mom will freak out if she finds out you're spending more money. Your mother's opinions about my spending are no longer my concern. Are you interested? Yes! Oh my God, yes! Can we take your new car? That was exactly my plan. Saturday morning, I picked up Stephanie in my red BMW, both of us dressed for a day in the city. I'd bought a new outfit for the occasion, a cashmere sweater and perfectly tailored pants that made me feel elegant and confident. Grandma, you look amazing, Stephanie said as she buckled her seatbelt. So do you, sweetheart. The drive into Manhattan was delightful. Stephanie was at her best, funny, intelligent, curious about everything. Without her parents around, she relaxed into the bright, engaging young woman she was becoming. Our first stop was Bloomingdale's, where I'd arranged for a personal shopping consultation for both of us. You want to buy me clothes? Stephanie asked as we rode the elevator to the personal shopping floor. I want to show you what it feels like to be treated like your preferences matter, your comfort matters, and your confidence matters. The personal shopper, Maria, was a master of her craft. She helped Stephanie find clothes that made her feel sophisticated without trying to look older than she was. Age-appropriate but elevated, classic pieces that would serve her well for years. For myself, I chose clothes that reflected who I was becoming rather than who I'd always been. Colors that made my skin glow, cuts that flattered instead of hiding, fabrics that felt luxurious against my skin. Grandma, Stephanie said as we loaded our shopping bags into the car. This has been the best day ever. The day's not over yet. Lunch was at a restaurant I'd seen featured in a magazine, the kind of place with white tablecloths and servers who treated every customer like royalty. Stephanie looked around in wonder. I feel like I'm in a movie, she whispered. You should feel like this is how you deserve to be treated, I replied. Remember this feeling, Stephanie. Remember what it's like when people respect you and care about your experience. Is that what you're doing? Remembering what it feels like to be respected? Smart girl. Too smart for her own good sometimes. Yes, I suppose I am. Good for you. You deserve it. Over our elegant lunch, Stephanie told me about her plans for college, her interest in studying abroad, her dreams of seeing the world. I listened to her with complete attention, asking questions that showed I took her seriously. Grandma, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you rich now? Like really rich? Why do you ask? Because this whole day, the clothes, the restaurant, the way people treat us, it feels like how rich people live. I considered my answer carefully. Stephanie, I have enough money to live exactly the way I want to live. I have enough to be generous with people I love without compromising my own security. I have enough to make choices based on what makes me happy instead of what I can afford. That sounds like being rich to me. Maybe it is. Are you going to tell Mom and Dad how much money you have? I don't think so. They don't need to know specifics. Because they'll act weird about it? Because they already are acting weird about it, and they don't even know the half of it. Stephanie nodded thoughtfully. Sometimes I think my parents are kind of immature about money. What do you mean? They want things they can't afford. And instead of waiting or saving up, they just expect someone else to help them get it. That's not how being an adult is supposed to work, is it? No, sweetheart, it's not. Well, I'm glad you're not helping them anymore. They need to figure it out themselves. We spent the afternoon at the Museum of Modern Art, where Stephanie showed a surprising appreciation for abstract expressionism. Then we caught a matinee performance of a musical she'd been wanting to see. By the time we drove home that evening, loaded with shopping bags and full of good food and culture, I felt like I'd given my granddaughter something more valuable than expensive clothes or Broadway shows. I'd shown her what it looked like for a woman to value herself. "Grandma," she said, as we pulled into her driveway, "thank you for today. It was perfect. Thank you for being such wonderful company. Can we do it again sometime?" "Absolutely. Anytime you want to spend the day with someone who thinks you're brilliant and beautiful and capable of anything." She hugged me tight before getting out of the car. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, sweetheart, more than you know." As I drove home, I thought about the day. I'd spent probably $1,500 on clothes, food, and entertainment. A month ago, that would have represented weeks of careful budgeting. Now it was just the cost of giving my granddaughter a memory that would last forever. My phone was buzzing with missed calls when I got home. 3 from Jessica, 2 from Michael, 1 from Brad. I checked the voicemail from Jessica. "Mom, Stephanie said you took her shopping in the city today. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand." I deleted the message and poured myself a glass of wine. Getting out of hand? Perhaps. But sometimes that's exactly what life needed. The ambush came Sunday morning. I was enjoying my coffee and newspaper on the deck when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Multiple car doors. Through the kitchen window, I saw Jessica, Brad, Michael, and Ellen all walking up my front path with identical expressions of grim determination. This was an intervention. I took my time answering the door. "Well?" I said, opening the door to find all 4 of them standing on my porch. "This is quite a welcoming committee." "Mom, we need to talk," Jessica said. "All of us." "Do we?" "Because I seem to recall having several talks recently, and they all seem to end the same way." "This is different," Michael said. "How so?" "Because we've been talking to a financial advisor," Brad announced, like he was revealing a trump card. "How nice for you." "Mom, please, can we come in?" Ellen asked. She looked uncomfortable with the whole situation, which suggested she'd been dragged along against her better judgment. I let them in, mostly out of curiosity about what new approach they'd devised. They arranged themselves in my living room like they were conducting a board meeting. Jessica pulled out a folder. Apparently, everyone in my family had taken to carrying folders these days. "Mom," she began, "we're concerned about your recent spending patterns." "Are you?" "Yesterday alone, you spent over $1,500 on shopping and entertainment." "How could you possibly know that?" "Stephanie told us about the day. Bloomingdale's, expensive restaurant, Broadway show, new clothes for both of you." And that's irresponsible spending for someone on a fixed income." I almost laughed. "Fixed income? You're 55 years old with a secretary's salary. Even if you've been saving aggressively, you can't sustain this level of spending." "Can I?" Brad leaned forward with his folder. "We've done the math, Mrs. Thompson. Even if you've saved 20% of your income for 30 years, even with compound interest, you couldn't have more than maybe $400,000 total. Interesting calculation. So spending $1,500 in one day represents almost 0.5% of your entire net worth," Jessica continued. "At this rate, you'll be broke in 5 years. "Will I?" Michael jumped in. "Mom, we're not trying to control your money. We're trying to help you plan for your future." "My future? What happens when you need long-term care? What happens if you have a medical emergency? What happens when you can't work anymore? I set down my coffee cup and looked at each of them in turn. Those are excellent questions, I said. What do you think happens? Well, Jessica said, we'd help you, of course, but we'd need advance notice to plan for that kind of financial responsibility. There it was, the real concern. Not my financial security, but their potential obligation to support me if my money ran out. I see. So you're worried that my current spending might leave you responsible for my care in the future. That's not how we'd put it, Ellen said quietly. How would you put it? We're worried about you, Michael said. This isn't like you, Mom. The expensive dinners, the new car, shopping sprees in Manhattan? It's like you've become a different person. Have I? Yes. The mom we know is careful with money, practical, responsible. You mean the mom you know puts everyone else's needs before her own wants. That's not, isn't it? The mom you know gives money to her adult children without question. The mom you know drives a sensible car and wears sensible clothes and lives a sensible life so she can be available when you need financial help. I stood up and walked to my desk, pulling out Mr. Peterson's business card. I want you to call this number, I said, handing the card to Jessica. Why? Because you seem to think you know my financial situation, and you're operating on assumptions that are, I paused, choosing my words carefully, incomplete. Mom, we're not trying to snoop into your finances. Yes, you are. You're trying to determine exactly how much money I have so you can calculate how much I can spend without compromising your future access to it. That's not fair, Brad protested. Isn't it? You just presented me with a mathematical analysis of my spending patterns based on assumptions about my income and savings. That's exactly what you're doing. I sat back down. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Mr. Peterson and schedule a meeting. He's going to explain my actual financial situation to you. And then we're going to have a conversation about boundaries. Boundaries? Jessica asked. Boundaries about my money, my spending, and my decisions. Boundaries about what input I'll accept from my adult children about my lifestyle choices. Mom, because here's what you don't seem to understand. Whether I have $400,000 or $4 million or $4, my money is mine to spend as I choose. The number hit them like a physical blow. $4 million. I hadn't said I had it, but I hadn't denied it either. $4 million? Michael whispered. The point is, it doesn't matter. Rich or poor, I'm done justifying my choices to people who only show interest in my finances when it affects them. If you have that kind of money, Brad said slowly, why haven't you told us? Why would I? Because we're family. We've been struggling financially, and you've been sitting on millions of dollars. Have you been struggling, Brad? Because from where I sit, you've been living in a house you couldn't afford, taking vacations you couldn't pay for, and expecting me to subsidize the difference. That's not the same thing, isn't it? You've been treating me like a backup bank while you live beyond your means. How is that struggling? Ellen cleared her throat. Mrs. Thompson, I think what they're trying to say is that it changes things, knowing that you have significant wealth. How does it change things? Ellen? Well, it means you could help more, if you wanted to. And there it was. Not relief that I was financially secure, not happiness for my good fortune, just recalculation of how much they could ask for. You're right, Ellen. I could help more. I could pay off all your student loans and buy Michael's business equipment outright and cover Brad and Jessica's mortgage completely. Their faces lit up with hope. But I'm not going to. The hope died. Why not? Jessica asked. Because money you don't earn has no value. Because problems you don't solve yourself teach you nothing. Because people who get everything handed to them never learn to appreciate anything. Mom, that's wisdom, Jessica. Hard-earned wisdom from someone who spent 30 years enabling financial irresponsibility in the people she loved most. I picked up my coffee cup. Mr. Peterson's number is on the card. Call him. Learn exactly how secure my financial future is. And then decide whether you want a relationship with me based on who I am or based on what I might give you. That's not fair to ask, Michael said. It's the only fair thing to ask. They left without scheduling the appointment, but I knew they would call. The number was too big, the curiosity too strong. As I watched them drive away, I felt something I hadn't expected. Sadness. Not regret, but genuine sadness that it had come to this. That money had revealed something about my family I wished I'd never had to see. But sometimes, the truth was worth the pain of learning it. The call from Mr. Peterson came Tuesday morning. "Mrs. Thompson, your daughter Jessica and her family came in yesterday afternoon. They were quite surprised by the scope of your financial holdings." I imagine they were. They asked if they could establish a line of credit against your trust assets. "For family emergencies," they said. I almost choked on my coffee. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them that any access to trust funds would require your explicit written authorization for each transaction, and that you'd already established very specific parameters for family assistance." Good. They seemed upset by those limitations. I'm sure they did. They also asked about the likelihood of you changing your will to leave everything to charity instead of family. Now I did laugh. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them that would be entirely up to you." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking about the conversation. My family's first response to learning about my wealth hadn't been happiness for my security or curiosity about my late aunt's life. It had been an immediate attempt to access the money. The knock on my door came Wednesday evening. This time it was just Jessica, looking smaller and more uncertain than I'd seen her since she was a child. "Mom, can we talk?" "Of course." She came in and sat on the edge of the couch like she was ready to run. "I owe you an apology," she said without preamble. "Do you?" "Yes, a big one. We went to see your lawyer, and he told us about the trust fund, about how much money you inherited. And I realized something. My first thought wasn't, 'I'm so glad Mom is financially secure.' It was, 'How much can she give us?'" I waited. "That's awful, isn't it?" "It's human," I said gently. "But yes, it's also awful. I don't know when I started thinking of you as a resource instead of a person. Probably around the time I started acting like one. That's not your fault. It's not entirely yours either. I enabled it." We sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. "Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. All right, do you still love us, even after everything that's happened?" The question caught me off guard. "Jessica, of course I love you. But do you like us? Do you actually enjoy spending time with us, or have we become people you help out of obligation?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. At some point over the years, she'd become a stranger to me. Someone who called when she needed something, visited when it was convenient, treated our relationship as transactional. "I love you unconditionally," I said carefully. "But I don't like the people you've all become around money. I don't like the entitlement, the assumptions, the way you've treated my generosity as your right. That's fair. But Jessica, I also don't like the person I became. The person who said yes to everything, who never set boundaries, who measured her worth by how useful she was to other people. So what happens now? Now we figure out if we can have a relationship that isn't based on you needing things and me providing them." "I'd like that," she said quietly. "I miss you, Mom. The real you, not the bank. I miss you too. Can I ask you something else?" "Sure. What was Aunt Eleanor like? Really like?" I smiled. "She was complicated, intelligent, independent, a little eccentric. She lived exactly the way she wanted to live. Did she leave you all that money because she thought you needed it? She left it to me because she thought I deserved it. There's a difference." Jessica nodded thoughtfully. "Mom, if I promised to never ask you for money again, would you believe me?" "I don't know. Would you mean it?" "I think so. I hope so." "Then let's find out." Over the following weeks, a strange thing happened. With money off the table as a topic of conversation, my family and I had to find other things to talk about. It was awkward at first, like strangers learning to make small talk. But slowly, we began to rediscover each other. Michael visited to show me pictures from Ellen's graduation. She'd found a way to pay for nursing school through a work-study program and graduated with honors. They were proud of what they'd accomplished on their own. Brad got a promotion at work and called to share the good news, not because it meant he could pay me back, but because he wanted to celebrate with someone. Even Stephanie seemed different, less focused on material things, more interested in experiences and relationships. And Jessica? Jessica started calling just to talk. About her job, her friends, her thoughts about life. Not once did she mention money. On my 56th birthday, they threw me a party. Not because they felt obligated, not because they wanted something, but because they wanted to celebrate me. It was held at Jessica's house, but it was elegant in its simplicity. Good food, thoughtful decorations, and a cake that Jessica had made herself instead of buying. The gift they gave me was perfect. A photo album filled with pictures from throughout our family history, with handwritten notes about their favorite memories with me. Memories that had nothing to do with money or help or obligations. Just love. As I drove home in my red BMW, I thought about Eleanor's letter. Use it to make them remember who they're dealing with. She'd been right. The money hadn't changed who I was. It had revealed who I'd always been underneath the habit of putting everyone else first. Margaret Thompson. Not the bank of mom, not a convenient resource, just Margaret, a woman who deserved to be loved for who she was, not what she could provide. The woman who looked back at me in my rearview mirror was confident, well-dressed, and genuinely happy. She was exactly who I'd always meant to become. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.